This is odd hour for this type of session, but we thought we'd see how many people were on board for a mid-afternoon, if you're in the Eastern time zone, presentation. Kind of watching the paint dry today. Not much movement, except if you're Amazon, which is going loco. I sort of curious myself. Oh, I see. All right, this is pretty clear target in Amazon. It's not wasting much time getting there. Today it took a big leap. This is a request session, so it will be driven by your requests. We've got a few people in the room. I'm going to give it some time so that more of those who registered can get here if they are indeed coming. Let's take a look. I have no questions thus far, but I'm going to just review some of the particulars. It seems Boeing is maybe the most remarkable stock. You can see, even though they had an actual order cancellation on the 737 MAX, that the stock barely blinked. It is the most institutionally supported stock on earth right now. This session, by the way, will be recorded, or it is being recorded for the benefit of those who couldn't attend, or for those of you who doze off sometime in the middle of it. And all right, I do have a few requests. One per person. I've got one person requesting 4 different stocks. I will generally try to answer them all, but get to as many as I can if there are no other questions. All right. And we'll start in 10, 9, 8, 7. Good afternoon. This is Rick Ackerman coming to you live from South Florida. And this is what we call a request session. So there's no beginner, intermediate, or advanced. All you need to bring is just a question, a stock that you might want me to take a look at. And I'm going to use the hidden pivot system that I've developed over the last 20 or so years to get a handle on some of these things that we trade and track. Before I move into some of your requests, well, let me welcome you. We've got, well, I'm expecting a fair crowd today. But just to look at the Dow, the pattern that I'm using, if TradeStation will grant me a correct point A here. I use ABC patterns for everything, but in some nuanced ways. And you can see that the industrial average is struggling at that red line. That's what I call a midpoint pivot. And it's especially resistant because it's also buyers are encountering resistance from the May high, very important high. And to me, it looks like we've kind of broken through it, but it's not yet ready to do its thing. a lot of conflicts out there. If you look at some of the best of the technical forecasters, they're not exactly, as I mentioned, the chat room brimming with confidence about which way things are headed in a big way next. So everybody's, all the gurus are kind of playing it close to their vests. And it's true, it's not really, at least by my reckoning, a time to be a hero and say, hey, we're going to blast off. But that's what I think is going to happen. I'm looking at this chart, and even though I could bring you a dozen good reasons why the Dow would be looking better, more logical down around 8 to 10,000, why I think it's actually headed up to 28,738 to almost 29,000. So that would be a a pretty substantial move from here. But based on what's happening here at the red line, again, what I call the midpoint pivot, I don't see it falling apart. And if it did, it would be a tempting buy on a pullback to the green line. So just remember that an 1,100 or so point collapse in the Dow would, in my way of looking at it, be an opportune buy. All right, so let's take a look at some of your requests. I've got one for starting it off, Netflix, and Netflix is just starting to break out of a range that's really trapped it since last January. I used to be down on Netflix because their selections were so poor, but over time they produce so much good television that I have to admire their success. So it's breaking out of the range, but not breaking out above that high that we made in late April, early May. When it finally gets going, let me clear off some of the extra lines here so we can get a fresh perspective. The pattern that makes sense to me, well, there's the very big one here, and this is kind of a big picture. I need to back up, as I often do at TradeStation, to get the proper ABC coordinates. And interesting, I'm taking not what I call the marquee low, the obvious low, but I'm using what I call a one-off to set up a pattern that I think will work. And it's confirmed by this very precise stall that we had at that red line, the midpoint pivot. So it tells me a couple things. Number one, that I've got the right pattern for predicting a very precise top here, but also for predicting a minimum upside target. So right now, 407, the pink line, what I call a secondary pivot, is my minimum rally target for the bull market in Netflix. But if it pushes past that decisively, I'd say stock is bound for 437.65. So it's not exactly impaling that red line here in this attempt over the last week to get through it. And if it just took a big stab through it, I'd say that 437 was a done deal. I still think it's going to be hit, but it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. It's not going to be, as I foresee it, a wicked leap for that target. It's just going to slowly make its way up there, or in the case of Netflix has a way of doing better than slowly making its way to targets. Also, I'll mention that the stock was a not bad, what I call a mechanical buy back here at the green line around 348 or so. And that is a type of entry tactic that we use with these hidden pivot patterns. But again, not a done deal yet. It's still struggling with the midpoint pivot at 378. But once it gets through, I'd give it pretty good odds, 60, 70% of getting to that 437. Well, more than that, really, I would say, but getting there relatively straightforwardly, 437.65. Request for Nokia, still in business. Well, the PD stands for, okay, partial data. And on the hourly chart, it looks like it's been in distribution for so long that you could almost think it's consolidation. But we've definitely had a really tedious, asphyxiating standoff here between bulls and bears. And let's take a look at the bigger charts, like a weekly, to see if there's something. This stock is so tiresome; it's really ugly. It's trading exactly where it was in 2000, mid 2016. So I don't see any. If you're this is, I don't know what the interest would be in this stock, but it certainly is as uninteresting as a stock could conceivably be. It is nowhere. But yes, the overall pattern, I tend to favor the downside, uh, mainly because this high chickened out. We had a rally here, and if it gone just a few extra inches to get above that, what I call external peak, I'd have better feelings about Nokia. But as things stand, I would have a somewhat of a bearish bias using this downtrending pattern, assuming TradeStation lets me get the correct A here. And I think minimum downside to $3.67. I'd be an aggressive buyer there. That's a good midpoint support. Very clear. It looks very promising. Up here, I suppose you could be a buyer, but you know, there are easier ways to make money than this stock. All right, I've got a request for Maxar Tech Limited, and it looks like someone must have asked me about this stock before. We know it's not going to minus 82 cents. Usually when I get a very clear, and it's not in this case, but a very clear target in minus territory, it tends to mean that the company is on its way to bankruptcy. But let's see. The weekly chart is not particularly interesting. It would take a move above this little external peak right there, which lies at, let's see, 12. The peak is at 1292. So we need a $4 rally from here to get the stock even remotely on bullish radar. But right now it's just in a weak counter bear market move. Not that it's we can trade it just the same. Let me come down a little bit and see if I can find the qualifiers that I need. The big thing here is this peak, and once above that peak, I guess that's the same one that we just looked at 1292. But and that's really when the stock will become interesting in a bullish way. I can take a really nutty pattern right here, a little bit gnarly, to project an 1101 target. I'm not perfectly confident in that because this first leg, the impulse leg, A, B, did not get above any external peaks. But since it's all we have, we'll glom onto it here, and I'll give you a projection of 1101. But I wouldn't bet the farm on it. I certainly wouldn't go short there against the trend, but I think it's a reasonable bet for 1101. If we were doing a mechanical buy in the stock, I would use the 840, just put a bid at 840, and the stop loss would be, let's see, 261, 84 cents. The stop loss would be about 84 cents below 840. So it would be, how would I say, 84 cents, 81 cents below 840. Any case, it's technically a third of the differential between where we're getting in 840 and that 1101 target that we're trying to get to. Let's see what else we have here. First Majestic, popular play in silver, and it's doing well. It took a target that I would have warranted as strong resistance there at $7 and looks like 72 cents, and it just blew right through it. And that significantly raises the odds that this chop that we've seen since is a consolidation for another move up. But that stock could take its sweet old time doing that, but it looks pretty good to me. And let's see if, well, thank you, TradeStation. I'll have to get rid of that. And there are no external peaks along this steep wall here to qualify this part of the rally as being an AB impulse leg. So it's hard to read. Not hard to read. I mean, we can sort of get a rough handle on it, but nothing quite precise and reliable enough to set up a trade that I would guarantee you will do well. All right, but I give it minimum upside here to 822, and if it pushes past that 822 easily or decisively being maybe 20 to 30 cents intraday, I would rate or 15 to 25 cents make that. I would rate the stock a good bet to reach that 908 target and perhaps a little higher. Um, I actually like this pattern maybe slightly more, and it projects to 834. So that's where I think it's going, and at a minimum. So I would just keep an eye on it there. Request for Dave. I've got about 15 requests there from. Let's EXAS. I have no idea what that is. That is Exact Sciences, and well, we know kind of what they do, I guess, if they call themselves Exact Sciences, but we know they're not economists or climatologists. And stock was a nice, promising mechanical buy back there on the fallback to the green line. That happened in mid-May. So the stock was a buy in mid-May off that mechanical signal. And I think it's a clear enough target at 124.26, Siggy, that I can warrant you. I'll promise you that it's going to get there. And if it pushes through that number easily, that would be a bullish sign. Maybe we would trot out a bigger chart here, the weekly chart. And I don't know what Exact Sciences does for a living, but they're apparently doing it with some success. Not underappreciated by investors either. Well, whatever BCs we can draw on this chart, the stock has gotten past the target. I'd be careful just above here at 122.86. The pattern is kind of hairy because I could have taken either of two other BC corrections to produce a target, but I'll stick with this one. I like 122.86, and if not there, then the target that I gave you, looking at the smaller piece of it, this A, B, C. Let's see what's the prospect on gold. We'll look at gold in a bit. Let me take a look at some of these other ones from Dave. They may be requests. DocuSign. I guess this is the one that lets you sign documents, and since it's digital, the company's probably valued at $50 billion or some such. Well, I don't see anything happening here on a weekly chart that I can really get a handle on. Daily chart, I can tell you that the fact that well, let's see if it actually occurred. That high is 54.96. That one's 94. I was going to say that because this rally chickened out, it looked here, saw that little resistance and turned tail, but that's not the case. The rally actually went a tick above, so we have a decent pattern that I can use to project a target and give you. All right, the stock last week tripped a theoretical entry at the green line around 51.14, and it is a good bet to reach a minimum 53.05. I would say there's a very strong chance of a tradable pullback from 53.05, but if it gets through it instead, if it just kind of pops through it, that would certainly raise the odds of a continuation of the rally up to that 56.87D target of this pattern. All right, take a look at Roku. And Roku just keeps eating up D targets with the greatest of ease. Pull back from this one, but not for long. And there it was, chomping on the bit again. So let me take a look at some other possibilities here. All right, so it took out that target with the greatest of ease. And I don't follow this company. I don't know really why there would be such interest in the stock. I mean, to me, it's just another purveyor of content, but not even, I don't think Roku produces content. It's just an intermediary for other purveyors of content. So I don't know. These days, it's all in subscriber growth for companies like this, but I don't really know what's driving it. Let's see. I mean, it's not too bad to have doubled your money since April. And the only pattern I can use to get a half decent handle on the stock is right here. Looks like minimum 113.99. That'll be a new record high and kind of in the middle of nowhere. So because that red line, the midpoint pivot, is in the middle of nowhere, it has a somewhat higher than usual chance of working, of essentially reversing this rally. So be careful at 113.99, but right now it looks like an absolute lockup lead pipe cinch to get to that number. Beyond Meat, I get a lot of requests for this. The stock was a buy on the pullback to 152.65, what I call a mechanical buy. And it looks to me, as soon as you say it was a mechanical buy, that is to imply that it will reach its D target, in this case 234.90. And we do have ways of getting into these stocks belatedly. If you're interested, I would suggest coming over to Rick's Picks. I know a lot of people in the room today came as part of a promotion that we did. The promotion is at rickackerman.com/web deal. And that is about the best deal I've ever offered for a package of things that's designed to give you everything you need to develop your hidden pivot skills so that they're at the level where you can forecast and trade profitably. So again, if you want to take advantage of the deal, which as I said, some of you will already be aware of, go to rickackerman.com/web deal. Great package that'll give you everything you need for a full year to get really on board with the hidden pivot method. All right, so I do Beyond Meat turns up in request sessions that I do for my subscribers, and well, it looks like, as I said, it was a mechanical buy, 152.65, and I think the stock is going to hit 234.90. We never chisel these forecasts in stone. So let me say that if it takes out that C low at 125 and change, that would put a very different spin on this thing. Let's take a look, couple requests in the gold arena. This is exploration miners or exploration companies, and they're always considered the speculative edge of bullion investments, and in this case we want to trust but verify. And there is something interesting going on here, namely that this last spike that we had up to 65.85 on the 25th of June, it actually did take out that external peak. So that suggests that the rally has a little bit of gumption. So I'm going to use the pattern with that high right there to guide me. And it's had a nice move recently through the green line, tripping a theoretical buy signal for as high as 77.90. But most immediately, I would say look for minimum upside to 64.25. That's the midpoint hidden pivot. And you can take encouragement if on the first contact with that red line, buyers just hit it and blow right through it. If it seems to put up little resistance, that would be a bullish sign for the longer term in this this vehicle to play the gold miners. Another ETF for gold, it's the mining companies themselves, the larger companies, and this is a 3x bear. So this should give you a leverage play. If gold mining stocks move down, this should give you a leverage play on that. I hate these 3x ETFs because the 3x part of it is simply what's there to attract suckers. And all of these things are programmed to go to zero over time. And that gives the options that you might buy on this, puts or calls, an extra kicker for the smart guys who sell them to you. But don't think you can make money playing the options in this thing because they're booby trapped. You'll never, ever, ever make money. Well, I shouldn't say that. If you traded this for 10 years, there might be a few days when you'd have profitable options days, but not many. Seems like a lot of screwing around here for more than 3 weeks. It seems like that's a lot just to distribute for a move down to a mere 9.60. So, so this thing looks pretty awful, meaning correspondingly, inversely, gold itself looks good. But let's see if I can. All right. So the only pattern we can use for this 3x bear, and of course, my recommendation is completely different if you're talking about naked shorting options in this, because that's definitely the way to go. And nobody who's shorted options has had even a bad day. Even rallies like this one probably did not make their naked short positions, naked short calls in this vehicle threatening. But I would say if and when this thing breaks down, and it looks like it's poised to break down, we're going to at least 9.13, which is a bullish factor. That's essentially bullish on on gold because, again, this is 3x bear on the gold mining stocks. So between these two vehicles, it looks like the gold mining stocks are a buy, but speculatively because this thing hasn't broken down decisively beneath that green line. Another request, Twilo, shortstop, formerly Colorado Rockies, New York Yankees. Twilio. My eyes aren't so good. It's Twilio, and I have no clue as to what this company does. But let's take a look at the bigger picture. And I want to look first at a few prospective ABCs, not that one, but let's see, this one. Oh, it's obviously this highest BC pairing that we should concern ourselves with. And if you'd been here a month or two earlier, I would have said watch out at 150.37. The actual high there was 63 cents above that, and you had a pretty good pullback down to, holy smokes, 133 and change. So I'm sorry we didn't have that. You didn't ask me about Twilio a little bit earlier. Pullback, obviously, to take this thing even higher. It's just in a relentless bull market. Well, it relented a little bit, but the direction seems clear enough. I would take it out of the weekly and put it on a daily chart just for a little bit of clarity. And instead of, there's so many, we could take this here as our A, but there's so much BCing going on here that, well, it was a good mechanical buy back in April, but you would have waited a long time for this thing to take off. You could have taken a profit on the pop to the green line, maybe even a little more profit on the pop to the pink line. So you'd be left with the small part of your original position with the target objective of 155.32. That's where I think it's going, and it would have been a mechanical buy on a pullback, this pullback to here. And your stop loss would have been about somewhere between $7 and $8, meaning you would have been a buyer here with the stop loss at 125. A request for FCX, Freeport, big mining company. It don't look so hot. Was a good counterintuitive buy somewhere around here, but it's kind of rolling over, and I don't know. There's nothing to get excited about there. I would say it's just a trade at this point. I don't see any big. If this thing were going anywhere, this little rally peak here would have gone just a couple extra inches to take out that external peak there, and the fact that it didn't is a negative as far as I'm concerned. NG, I don't know whether you want to look at natural gas or no, I guess the stock Nova Gold, okay. And I mean, what the heck is going on here? Wow. I mean, I know Nova is popular with my subscribers. It gets more than its share of discussion in the chat room, although I'm surprised I haven't seen too much talk of Nova over the course of this amazing move from $4 just a month ago to $6. It's had almost a 50% move in a month. So it's a dangerous play up here. I mean, you can't just sort of buy it because it looks great. We always want some a systematic way of getting into the stock. I don't know why I can't move. There we go. Thank you, TradeStation. I don't know. I have trouble believing that this stock is just going to pop again with only the shallow correction that it's had so far. I mean, it seems to be going off to the races again today. And if it does, if it pops through the green line, I would say it's bound for a minimum $6.36. But it looks great. Let me just take a look at the weekly chart. And here you see, well, a stock just missed taking out that external right there. 727 versus 730. It missed by 3 pennies, and that's always a suspicious sign. But just the same, it doesn't look too terribly bad. To get a handle on another target besides the smaller pattern that we've used, I take this one right here and say it looks like a minimum 653. So if it continues and goes above the recent high, I'd say we're headed minimum 636, but possibly, well, let's just say 636. And well, the way it popped through 547, it did so decisively, no hesitation at all. I would say it gives me pretty good feelings about that 759 target. So I think Nova has a really good chance of that. That's what I would be focused on. And it's moving to at such an extreme that it's really hard to belatedly get on board. I have a comment here from Stephen. Roku's advertising platform is driving the stock. So I'm not quite sure what their advertising platform is doing. But of course, these days, all the big players, that's what they do. They're advertising firms, and Lord knows why the companies that are actually selling the things that are getting advertising are lagging other than in Amazon is beyond me. But it seems like part of the foolishness of this age that the tail should wag the dog, that glorified advertising companies like Facebook and Google should should be adored. Well, mainly because we have a relatively small number of companies that dominate huge businesses. I can't remember what Google's total take on online advertising is, but it's an enormous number. All right, so I like Nova Gold up to 759. Let's see, a request from Shri for MDB, MongoDB software company. They have database products and cloud services, competes with Oracle and a couple of Amazon products. Interesting, because Larry Ellison being Larry Ellison, you'd think that nobody competes with Oracle, at least not for long. He buys all of his competitors. So I don't know what they're doing that has kept them out of Larry Ellison's clutches, but the stock looks great. Well, it was a not bad, maybe 6.5, 7 on a 1 to 10 scale mechanical buy on the pullback to the green line, 144.62. It went just a little bit below it, less than $1 below it there, and it's taken off. It's had a pretty good move. And again, because this thing did signal a mechanical buy, that is as much as saying that it eventually will reach its D target, 207.68. So you need to track it a little more closely to figure out ways to get in to buy the stock without getting bruised too badly. And fortunately, we do have a lot of tricks with the hidden pivot method. Let me mention, if you are interested again in here's the Rick Picks homepage, rickackerman.com. Lots of good stuff there. But if you want to get right on top of the discussion and you don't subscribe already, go to the top, rickackerman.com, and leave your email address click start my free subscription and you'll be freely subscribed for 2 weeks. Head right for the trading room where we always have a robust discussion going on, less formally in the coffee house where any and all topics um, are fair. All right, so and also the chat room's a good place to get a handle on the smaller picture in stocks like this. It's obviously bullish, and we obviously want to get on board. But the question is how? Well, all right, I have to cut away because TradeStation has this weird thing going on. All right, now, well, it won't let me. TradeStation. I'll have to do that again. And I come down to the 60-minute chart. Well, for some reason, TradeStation's being a little son of a bitch here, but let's see. Let's see if it'll let me escape the weekly chart. All right, finally. All right, so MDB, if you want to get a handle on how to get in with risk tightly controlled, I would say stick around, ask the question in the chat room. What do you think of this pattern or that in MDB? We've got the request for Bitcoin. The symbol that I use for that is BRTI. BRTI tracks the best bid and offer across many Bitcoin markets in real time. So it's a very good proxy. And I had hoped to get a pullback to the green line. I never like to be in a position of hoping for anything, and it's a word that I almost never use in Rick's picks. But in this case, yeah, just to prove the case that these mechanical trades work brilliantly. The pullback, we had this wicked move from 3,100 up to this is really nutty, almost 14,000. So we know that the whack jobs are back in Bitcoin, and this time they have the endorsement of all the greedy dirtbags at some of the bigger banks. They all want in, and they've decided, I think, that as long as the idiots are going to be out there speculating in Bitcoin, that they may as well reserve the right to play. So it was really just a few banks saying, hey, we're going to get in this. And of course, now we've got Facebook playing Bitcoin wannabe. All right, so a pullback to the green line would have been a fabulous buying opportunity. It would be a picture-perfect mechanical buy, but it didn't get near 76.09. The low was $2,000 from that, so we didn't have a chance to get in. But I'll mention that this mechanical entry that I've talked about a few times, we've had a few examples of it, is the best vehicle that I've ever found for trading things that are violent and nasty like Bitcoin. And you'll need to take the Hidden Pivot course to get the full proprietary explanation of why the trade works so well. But if this thing had pulled back to the green line, it would have been a gorgeous buying opportunity. Now, not so much. And we certainly can't use the weekly chart to get long when this thing swings the way it does. So we're sort of stuck with the daily, and the daily, just to give you something to hang on to here, a target pattern. All right, I would have, we're a day late here, but I would have said watch out at 12,816.97 for a stall, and we've had a stall at well, in this case what looks like no distance at all. 12,824 is, it looks like exactly, but in this case when you're dealing with a $13,000 vehicle, just an exact hit can be, in this case it looks like 24, $8 off, $7 off. All right, so it did stall there, and by now, those of you who are on top of some of the charts that we've looked at will know that that midpoint, that red line, is crucial to what happens next. And if Bitcoin pops through it decisively, if it just rips through it over the next few days, I would say the odds are overwhelming that it's going to get at least to, we'll call it 16,000, but the exact number is 15,987. And based on a pretty precise stall, the pullback from the red line, I would expect a similarly precise pullback from the D target up there at 15,987. The longer this thing hesitates to get through the red line, the less certain would be a move up to 15,987, although I don't see anything stopping it. And I know that on the bigger charts that we're looking at, namely, let me go back to uh, the weekly chart. Um, my target for Bitcoin is up at 21,032. And based on the way the first encounter on the weekly chart stabbed through the red line, I would say 21,000 on Bitcoin is a very good bet. There's a suggestion, we have a couple Bitcoin experts in the Rick's Picks chat room, and one of them mentioned that instead of trying to play exchange trade securities, let's say derivatives of Bitcoin, that you go to a place called, I think it's Bitcoin Pro, or I can't remember, it's Pro. Well, I'll have to, you can inquire in the chat room, but it's a place where you can open up a Bitcoin account and buy Bitcoin or fractional Bitcoin so that you can play these moves without being fully immersed at the level of, so I see, it's Coinbase Pro. Thanks, Sri. All right, so Coinbase Pro is the name, and you can get directly involved with Bitcoin through that medium. Request for SMS text messaging provider, and why won't it give me SMS? Well, you have to give me another symbol there, Brian. Request for natural gas. Interesting story in a Wall Street Journal the other day about how for all the natural gas they're producing, the infrastructure, the pipeline, the means of getting natural gas from the major producers to the users is not that well. It's not that well developed. There are real problems here in the supply chain for natural gas. There's a real obvious pattern here that we should zero in on. This is for September 2019 natural gas, and oddly enough, looks like we had a new. That was really sick. It just upticked one tick above these highs, and then it collapsed again. That's really sleazy. So at least you know. I mean, you know who the enemy is here, and that you know that that this thing has a way of running stops before it turns down. But it looks to me like it's going to a minimum $1.85 per whatever it is, quinzillion, bazillion cubic feet. And well, let's see. Well, that's about all I can say about it right here, unless we get immersed in the very lesser charts. Request for VXX. I did put something in the chat room this morning. My good friend Garrett Jones, who has his own letter, it's called Observations. He was talking about Bollinger Bands and something that had occurred with the Bollinger Bands that he hadn't seen in quite a while, but his read was that it's good for a buy right around here in VXX. And I'm sorry that I neglect. I'd even put an alert on this chart, but I must have at some point mentioned to the umpteen people and my subscribers who are always hot to trot. They always want to buy VXX. We only buy it at the most opportune times, meaning when it is falling to a very clear target. So it was a buy at 23.56. And in this case, we do buy the options because we're looking to make money instantly, which we would have. Well, not quite. We bought the line, and it actually 23.56, and it closed 2 pennies. Well, it doesn't look like it, but it says here that it closed 2 pennies above. So we were in the black by the end of the day, and we're more in the black today. But I don't even know whether to tell you to buy it. I would have said buy call options down here with a pretty tight stop loss, and we'd still be in a position. But here, I like to get it so precisely right when I buy that the mere fact of a let's see, 44, 68-cent rally. Uh, Actually, at the highs, it was even more than that. We had a pretty good rally, actually. I'm not even sure I want to get in belatedly. I like to get in at the perfect time, but I wouldn't discourage you too aggressively from pursuing your bliss here. Let's take a look at the call options just to see um, what's going on. And I only suggest buying options when we're 90 seconds away from a profit, like we buy them and we're instantly profitable. So in this case, so we never want to go out too far. I mean, to go out farther, like, well, we'll buy some September options or August options because they've got more time. Time when you're an options buyer, a holder of options premium, you can't make a worse bet. The casino doesn't offer a worse bet. Even a big six wheel gives you better odds. So I only suggest buying options with near-term expirations. If we go, let's say to the 19th of July, well, that's 10 days. We've got some room to move. Historical volatility 19. The near the money's trading with an implied volatility of 24. All right, so they're not hugely overpriced, mainly because even there's so many suckers have been burned on the buy side of VXX options. Oh, I see. We're not even looking at VXX. We're looking at Microsoft. VXX has a much higher volatility. All right. Yeah, it trades with a historical of 60. I don't know what I was thinking there. And the 25s have all right, so the trading, the implieds are about what historical is, and the reason being is for what I just said, that so many people have been burned that the whole world doesn't go chasing these things all the time. So the 25s, they don't look like such a bad bet there at 63 cents. Could go a little further out of the money. Just keep in mind that these pups have only 10 days left on them. So they have till next Wednesday. And of course, some of those days are a weekend. So they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days left. If we go out just a little further, they'll be priced commensurately higher. But the 25s, yeah, they're trading near a buck. And the first place they get under a half a buck would be the 27s. But the 27s are doable. So I would say you could play a couple of these without going too far off the deep end. They don't look like such a revoltingly, disgustingly, repugnantly bad buy at 49 cents. So, and if we go back to the chart, and we go back to the chart, and you ask the question, what would it take to put these in the money? You need to pop up to here. And I know that you guys can all see that. If all we're doing is simply visualizing a move, what does a rally up to here where those options start to get into the money, how crazy does that look in the context of other big price bars that occurred during certain weeks? And keep in mind, this is the weekly chart, not the daily. All right, if we go to the daily, it'll give us a somewhat different and probably more accurate perspective. All right, so anyway, I was asleep at the wheel because I obviously drew this pattern with the intention of buying down around 23.56. So we need to move up into here before those calls. The calls are at the money right there. This is where you break even on the call, and there's going to be a half a dollar of time premium in them at this price. So again, not a bad bet. So I would say put as much money into those July 26th, 27 strike calls as you would into a scratch off lottery ticket, and then kiss your hard-earned money goodbye, and you'll be in what I think is a reasonable speculative bet there. GGI, I don't know what that is. That there is no GGI, maybe CGI. No, you'll need another symbol there, David. TSX, that's no symbol either. Let's take a look. All right. All right. Stephen notes U.S. citizens can trade fractions on Coinbase Pro, Poloniex, and Kraken, Kraken. And let's see. And Brian posted on Twilio. Let's see what Twilio does. Oh, I see. Twilio is a text message provider. So that's why it's worth billions of dollars. All right. He mentions all those cryptocurrency exchanges are regulated by the SEC, and they are New York State licensed cryptocurrency exchanges. Stephen asks, is the ability of whales to manipulate Bitcoin prices through unregulated foreign exchanges weakness for the hidden pivot method? No. The geniuses who are manipulating Bitcoin, they don't know it, but they're being controlled by larger forces, which are expressed in the form of hidden pivot targets. So the hidden pivot targets has nothing to fear from the Shark Tank. We're smarter than they are. We know more, and there's not quite as much guesswork. And you would ask about Yeti there, Francis. I did. I thought I tried to escape it forever in the chat room. It became a counterintuitive buy at 24.67. I don't even want to look at this stock anymore. I liked it because my son, who's a rancher, swears by Yeti equipment. It's really good. It's durable. He's bought me some Yeti stuff, and I bought him some Yeti stuff as gifts. And I love their stuff. I love their customer service. So when the stock was reporting its first positive earnings right here, almost to the day, and then it started down, you think, well, it's correcting a little bit. But when they corrected this great company, this great stock, all the way from 36.60 to 23.11, it reminded me of what a sleazy carnival game the stock market is, and it was just a little brutal. Not that I can't see it, predict it, know exactly where things are going, but it's just so disgusting, really, the way the smart guys, the geniuses who manipulate all these stocks, the way they play it. So here the stock was topping the first time the company turned a corner on earnings. They're doing everything right, and they beat the crap out of this stock, and it went way too far. And I think I suggested a counterintuitive buy somewhere down here off these lows. I didn't imagine that it was going to go for this low before the stock finally became a CI buy. All right, so here's what I'm going to give you on this. Be careful at 33.22. That's my target here, but I'm thinking we're very likely to get a stall. If you've had a long-term position, I would recommend doing some covered rights up at that level. And the bigger picture, though, we could see our way to, if it pops through the target, the bigger picture says the stock could get all the way. Oh, watch out doubly. We've got double resistance there at 33.25. I don't have any doubt that it's going to pull back from there exactly within a few pennies. So, but once it gets through that, or in the surprising event that it pops through 33, it closes above 33.25 for a couple of days, I would say the stock is bound very nicely, very comfortably, predictably for 43.38. And it's just a good buy and hold. But if you did that up here, you're a few days before, and one of your genius friends or your insiders calls you and said, "Hey, Yeti is coming out with great earnings. They're finally turning the corner," and you were long here, you're still not out. You're still not even. So you can see even great companies that are doing everything right. When it gets that way, when everybody knows, well, we should just own Yeti. That's why it takes evasive maneuvers like this one. The whole purpose of this is to persuade Yeti's strongest supporters that maybe they've got it wrong. Because if they haven't been persuaded of that, then everybody can make money simply by buying Yeti stock. We have a request, and this looks like the last request on the board for today for PepsiCo Inc. And let's see, was it Pepsi? All these, I'm always disparaging millennials, but the hallmark of millennials is that everything is coming in flavors now. So I can't remember whether it was Pepsi that was going to come out with a mango flavored Pepsi, but we owe that all to millennials and their quirky tastes in beverages and pretty much everything else. If you're a millennial, don't take it personally. Um, I don't know. I mean, I hate all these beverage makers. They've fractionated the market a zillion times. That everyone is creating 100 different products, each with 20 different flavors, and it's so sad. It's so pathetic. And why Pepsi keeps moving up, and Coke, I don't know. No idea. Well, I guess it's because of the deals they have with all the fast food companies, or maybe there are places in the world where they can sell carbonated sugar water where that doesn't have as strong a negative as, well, we know that Coke and Pepsi aren't really good for you. All right, let's take a look at a bigger pattern here. All right, well, this is a little better. I don't know what happened this week, but gives us at least something to, gives us a handle. Thank you, TradeStation. Let me see if I can bring this around. Well, at least we've got a target. It looks 141.97 to me. The gastritis that this thing developed trying to get through P, the midpoint, the red line pivot, suggests that, well, exactly what's happened. It's not exactly a romp to the D target, but I do think that's where it's gone, and I don't even know what to say when it when it gets there. Let's see. We're at the tail end of our hour here. Not that it was scheduled as an hour, but a request for the dollar. I'm hugely long-term bullish the dollar. Nothing anybody says has ever changed my mind. Although when you look at this, it's not hard to extrapolate a head and shoulders pattern from it. It's actually a pretty attractive one. A good pop higher would negate the head and shoulders-ishness of the pattern. But right now, I'm somewhat wary of it, even though I hate head and shoulder patterns. They're mostly garbage because everybody looks. They're everywhere you want to see them, everywhere. So, but I'm still bullish on the dollar. And I did get this bottom, by the way, almost to the penny, because I saw that low as being a counterintuitive trade equal to this low here as a point A. So I had a bullish call on the dollar at a very opportune time there, and we'll see as far as where it might be going now. Um, well, let's take it from here. Little move through the red line, so I think we can at least cross our fingers and say 99.05 looks doable. And that's it. The request for CGI trades on the Toronto Ventures Exchange. All right, GGIF. Well, that doesn't work either. All right, well, that is it for today, and I want to thank you all for your kind attention and interest. It's certainly been enjoyable for me. I hope that some of the things that I've said today will produce profitable results for you. It's not unusual for people who've been in these sessions to come back a few months later and say, boy, did I nail it. So I hope that I have, and I hope that you can make hay with it. So with that, I'm just going to mention again, rickackerman.com for a free trial, 2-week trial. And if you want the best package that I've ever offered for becoming an expert with this hidden pivot method, then go to rickackerman.com/web deal. So that's it, and I want to thank you once again for showing up. And we'll do these sessions again from time to time. And you all have a very pleasant, good day.